inspiring interviews with today's top landlords. This is the Rental Income Podcast. And now, Dan Lane.
I just love hearing stories like this. We have an incredible husband and wife team joining us on the podcast today. It's Grayson and Danielle Gist from Kansas City. They're listeners of the podcast, and they reached out to me to see if they could come on and share their story. And I'm so happy that they did, because they really have an incredible story that I think just about anybody could do. They own 2 fourplexes and a single family house. And right now they're house hacking. They live in one of the fourplexes, and they're living for free. The rent from the other 3 units is enough to cover the mortgage and all the expenses and generate them a profit every month. And the profit from the single family house and the other fourplex is enough that Danielle was able to quit her job. And today she's basically taking care of the rental properties, but she doesn't need to do a 9-to-5 job because of the extra income that they have. So we're going to get into their story, find out exactly how they did this. But first, let's take a really quick break. We'll thank our sponsors. We'll come right back and we'll meet Grayson and Danielle. The first step in buying a rental property is to get pre-qualified. And I would suggest you work with a lender that specializes in working with investors, because the last thing you want to have happen is to get to closing and find out the money's not there and you can't close. The lender that I recommend is Chaley Ridge from Ridge Lending Group. She's a nationwide lender, and she'll pre-qualify you for free if you mention Rental Income Podcast. Find out more today. Contact Chaley at ridgelendinggroup.com. That's RIDGE lendinggroup.com. NMLS 42056. Having to evict a tenant is painful. The best way to protect yourself from evictions is to screen tenants, and the best way that I know of to screen tenants is TransUnion SmartMove. It's a really valuable online screening tool delivering credit, eviction, and background reports in minutes, and their proprietary tenant credit check predicts evictions 15% better than generic credit scores. See why over 4 million landlords have used SmartMove to make better leasing decisions. Use code RENTAL25 at checkout to save 25% at tenantscreening.com. That's code RENTAL25 at tenantscreening.com. Danielle, let's start with you. So you were actually able to leave your job with just a handful of rental units?
Yeah. I stopped working for other people and started working just for ourselves. I manage a lot of the rentals instead of hiring a property manager, and then I do all the hands-on flips myself.
Okay. So is that, was that kind of your plan? Like when you guys first decided you were going to buy rentals, did you buy them thinking that eventually you could build up enough passive income to where you didn't need to work, or did it just kind of happen?
No, I think it just kind of happened. I mean, Grayson had to do some convincing for me to move in. And then once we got up here, we kind of realized that he didn't have the time that we hoped that he would. And the building that we bought was in a little bit worse shape than we thought that it was.
Okay, so you had to get involved and take some time. So, all right, so Grayson, So tell me, when you guys decided that you were, or I guess when you first had the idea that you wanted to buy rentals, was Danielle on board right away, or did you have to talk her into this?
Yeah, I mean, for the single family we bought in Oklahoma, it was pretty easy because we both saw the numbers when we were looking at rentals, because we were going to rent there, but the numbers didn't match up. So we both thought that the single family would be nice, and then every year that we move, we'll just buy another house and move out of it. But it did take some convincing to get her to move into a fourplex.
Okay.
So I remember distinctly saying, "Hey, I think we should live in a fourplex," and she's like, "Definitely not."
I think it was a hard no. We were walking the dog, and I said, "No, I'm not even entertaining that thought." So
Grayson, like, you ran the numbers and saw, okay, like, we can live here for free if we buy this fourplex. Was that kind of what you were thinking?
Yeah, I mean, I listened to, I don't remember which podcast it was, but I was sitting there listening, and I was like, oh, fourplexes, you can make 4 times the amount of money. It's all in the same building. You can get residential financing. And I was looking at it, and I was like, yeah, we could live there for free. And then when I started looking into it in Missouri, I was like, you can make even more money than what the mortgage is. And then that's what kind of drew me towards that, especially since we had the rest of the VA loan remaining, and I wanted to kind of maximize that.
So how did you actually talk Danielle into it? Like, what did you say to Or maybe I should ask Danielle. So Danielle, what did Grayson say that changed your mind?
Well, I always tell him that I'm logical to a fault. And he presented me with all the numbers. And I guess that was when I said I just couldn't turn it down.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I told her that it didn't have to be like terrible. So I told her like, okay, they have ones that are like townhouse style. Everyone has like a door in the building. No one's above you. Like I showed her kind of what they looked like in Missouri. And she's like, okay, I think we could probably do that.
Yeah. I said that I agreed as long as we had certain minimums.
Yes.
Like we had to have the townhouse style. I didn't want to have upstairs or downstairs neighbors.
We wanted a garage.
Yeah. We each had to have a garage. We wanted an area in the back where we could put in individual backyards. So we had a little bit of privacy. So it didn't quite feel like we were living on top of one another.
So explain to me what it looks like. So I'm picturing almost like 4 townhouses.
That is exactly what it looks like.
Okay.
Yeah. So everyone has their own garage, their own doors to their units, and then we all have our little backyards that are portioned off by a fence.
That sounds pretty awesome. Okay. All right. So let's take a step back and talk about how you started. So your very first property was a property that you bought that you were going to live in and then eventually turned it into a rental. Is that right?
Yeah, I was going to pilot training. So during that 1 year, we figured we were going to move somewhere else. So we lived in it, just did a lot of cosmetic stuff and felt like we flipped a house. And at the end of the day, after this actual flip, all we did was paint some walls and put some new appliances in there.
Okay.
But yeah, it was super simple. And then when we were ready to move out, we found a renter pretty much the first day we put it out there.
How about buying the property? Like you mentioned that you're in the military. Were you able to use the VA loan?
Yeah.
Okay.
So we actually went into it with $0 down, and I was able to get, I think it was some crazy low interest rate, and we didn't have to pay mortgage insurance. So that was super helpful with the numbers.
Awesome. So how much did you put into fixing the property up?
I think it was probably $10,000 altogether. And most of that was kind of optional. That was just stuff that we liked having since we were living there.
So how's it working out today? Has it been pretty easy, or has it been, how far away are you from the property?
We're about 4.5 hours, and we have it professionally managed.
Okay.
So it's been pretty smooth. It's sometimes annoying to manage the manager, but it is nice not having to do the day-to-day stuff like we do in fourplexes. So
give me some numbers here. So how much money do you make off that property after you pay all the expenses every month?
I think it's about $270.
Okay.
So something like that.
All right. So that's a little bit of money, and that's a really good start. But you're not, Danielle, I assume, is not going to be able to leave her job off $200-300 a month. So talk to me about that next move. So that fourplex really seems like it really set you guys on the right track, because the benefit was you were going to live there and the tenants were going to cover the mortgage, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I was we were in training. I ended up being an IP, like an instructor pilot. So while I was down there at instructor training, I decided that we should send out mailers because we kept getting outbid on fourplexes. And one of the guys actually got back to us saying he had 2 that he wanted to sell. And I looked at it and I was like, okay, the market's really hot. I know there's something we can do with this other one to make some money. So we ended up working with a realtor, and we wholesaled the first one, and we used the down payment on that to put down our payment for the second one.
Okay, awesome. All right, tell me about the mailer. So, how did you know who to mail to? What kind of list were you pulling for that?
So we actually made a list ourselves. I went on the county website, and I figured out what the land use code was for the fourplexes. And we narrowed it down to, I think, about 400 in the area that we were looking. And then I found a way to get photos of all of them that the county updated. So we went through and just kind of picked out which ones we were going to send mailers to.
Awesome. Okay, so a little bit of legwork, and you were able to pull a list. How many people did you mail to, or how many properties did you mail to?
33.
Yeah, we sent out 33, and we heard back from
4.
That's really good. That's a great return. So, were you screening on anything else, to see if, sometimes finding out of town owners are good people to target, or people that have a lot of equity? Were you able to screen on any of that, or did you just randomly find these 33 people?
So we found the people that had it in their personal names. I figured they were more kind of mom and pop style. Mm-hmm. So there were a lot of LLCs that owned probably at least 50% of them.
Okay.
So that's what we looked for was individual owners, and most of them were out of state, but we actually found one in state for the one we bought.
Awesome. All right. So you mailed letters, and what did you mail them? Like, was it letters or postcards, or like, what did you send them?
So it was a postcard, and it was in a little white envelope. So it looked like an invitation to something, and it was all handwritten.
Okay.
So we thought if it's handwritten, they'll be more encouraged to open it because they'll think, okay, my name is all over this. And someone took the time to handwrite it. It must be important.
Right.
You know, they sat down with an ink pen and actually did this. So it must be something personal.
Totally. And what did you say?
I think it started out, it was greetings because we couldn't figure out how to start it. And we said, you know, my name is Grayson and did we say you're in the Air Force?
We said that we were moving to the area for work and that I'm from that area and we were looking for a fourplex to live in.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
awesome. All right. So what happened to the people that you didn't ended up buying? You said there was a few people that contacted you. Were they just not serious about selling their property?
They just had the numbers didn't work at all. So they wanted like 500,000 and the rents were like 3,500. So there was just not much that we could do with those ones.
Yeah. So that's good. So you knew, like, just because you weren't mailing to 1,000 people, you were mailing to a handful of people, you kind of knew like what you were looking to pay.
Exactly. We had comps. Like I was looking at Zillow for all the rents and figuring out what neighborhoods rent for what amounts. So we had a good idea.
Awesome. Okay. So the guy that wanted to, I guess the guy you actually bought from, so he was an investor, he had 2 properties, and you just said, yeah, we'll take both of them?
Yeah, so originally I was like, well, I can only close on one of these, and I was talking to Danielle, and I've read enough books to figure out, okay, there's money to be made, and eventually I just said, okay, I will buy both of them for $350. And then I put and/or assigned in one of them.
Awesome.
And then he asked what that means. And I told him all about it. And he's like, okay, as long as I get my $350, I don't care.
Okay, awesome. So, all right. So the property that you were going to wholesale, so you know you have a good deal. How did you find a buyer to buy that property?
Since I was down in Texas at the time, we found a realtor that's local. And we worked with him to find a buyer. And he found one pretty much 2 days after we put it out there.
Incredible.
He put it on the MLS, which really helped.
Oh, wow. Okay. He listed it on the MLS. Okay.
Yeah. He talked to his broker and his broker said, yeah, that's fine. We can go ahead and put it up there. So that's how we found our buyer.
Okay.
Yeah, it was 2 days later. We had an offer for like 10,000 above the list price.
Awesome. Yeah. So how much did you guys make selling that contract?
So our margin was about 40,000. We ended up doing a double close. So we closed on it. And that same day, I used a bridge loan, so a hard money loan for a day. And I paid, I think, about 5,000 for that. And then we paid our closing costs. And at the end of the day, we made 28,000 and then we split it 50-50 with our realtor.
Okay. So for anyone that doesn't understand, I mean, they basically flipped a house that they did nothing to. Right? Like you guys didn't do any improvements to the house. You sold it as is, and you made $28,000 just flipping this house, basically.
Yeah.
That's exactly what we did.
Yeah, we
That's
owned it
awesome.
for 1 hour.
That is awesome.
And then it was signed off to the next person.
That is really awesome. All right. So now you've got $28,000. And tell me how that worked. Like, so getting the next mortgage, was that entire $28,000 your down payment to buy the property you ended up keeping?
Yeah, so we like I said, we split it with the realtor, so we had 14 at the end
14,
of the day.
Okay.
And we took that 14, and that was, I think we needed to put 11,000 down for the other portion of our VA loan. It was about 3.5%, kind of like the FHA.
Okay.
So that's pretty much what we ended up. We took all that money straight in for the loan, and then that paid it off for at least the down payment portion.
And you were able to get 3.5% down because you were living in that property. So you didn't need to have a 20 or 25% down payment. You got into it with 3.5, which isn't a whole lot. I mean, that's really awesome.
Yeah. And since it was the VA, we didn't have PMI on that one either.
Yeah. All right. So what kind of condition was this property in?
So they were both identical. We picked the one that had a little bit more land just because we wanted to build a fence around it. But the condition from the inspector, he said it was one of the best fourplexes he's ever seen, which threw me off. And I got super excited. And very quickly, we figured out that there's mold behind almost every wall, under all of the tiles. There were active water leaks. There was a leak under the slab. Yeah. So it was fantastic.
How do you think the inspector missed that?
I think since we were out of the state at the time, I don't think he really looked at anything. I think he just kind of poked around. And on the surface, it looks fine. But as long as you have like the eye for what you're looking for, which we assumed that would have happened, there's a lot of obvious kind of signs. So like as soon as we walked in and all the furniture was out, we could see that there was some mold growing through the wall. And then we took the drywall out and the whole thing was mold. Like the mold gun was through up.
Like the actual studs, the exterior framing was all bad.
Yeah.
Wow.
On that wall. So we got it fixed.
That sounds like a pretty expensive problem to fix, was it?
At the end of the day, I think we spent $1,600 for a whole exterior.
$1,600, okay. So was it just one of the units that had the mold, or was it in the whole fourplex?
So far, the only place we took a moisture meter to every single wall in here. And this was the only one that had issues. So we got lucky that we got the one that we could take the walls out.
Yeah, where there wasn't a tenant in it, getting sick or anything like that. We went through and we inspected all the other units, like tooth and comb. Like a fine-tooth comb, and we didn't see any other issues.
Okay, good. Okay. All right. So was the whole building occupied when you bought it, or did you have, were they vacant? What was the condition like?
It was 100% occupied.
Okay.
We actually had to move somebody out, which was super awkward and not fun. So I ended up calling them the day that we closed, and I told them, hey, we can't renew your contract since we have to move into this thing.
It was a month-to-month lease.
Yeah, it was a month-to-month, so we just said we can't renew it. And then he immediately said, my money's not good enough for you, and this, that, and the other. And then I tried to backtrack politely, but at the end of the day, he punched a hole in the wall, and then he left. So we patched the hole in the wall, and he moved on somewhere else.
Well, yeah, hole in the wall. I mean, it could have been worse, I guess, right? I mean, that's a pretty easy fix. So how did you decide that you were going to live in his unit versus the other units?
Well, when we first walked in, it smelled like ferrets. So that was kind of the number one sign. But he was also $400 below market on his rent. So I think that was the other thing. That was our primary motivator. Okay. So, worst shape, least amount of money. We said this is the biggest place for us to make an improvement.
And then with the other 3 units, like were they at market rent, or were you able to raise those rents a little bit? Or
so we actually, 2 of them are about market. We raised them a little bit, but the other end unit, so the other 3-bedroom one, apparently it was a Section 8 tenant, which we did not know, and I didn't fully understand how that worked. So we ended up, she was, I think, $300 and some below market.
It was like $350 below market.
Yeah, so we ended up having to work with the housing authority to figure out how to raise the rent. And it turns out she was on the wrong voucher. So we got her the appropriate voucher, and we raised the rent $350, and her payment went down.
Yeah, so she pays less every month now to live here because she's finally on the appropriate voucher. She's finally being taken care of.
She's paying less, but you're getting more.
Exactly.
Because the housing authority is paying more rent. All right, so how did
they taught us on that?
How did everything work out? Like, are you guys more than covering the mortgage on that property?
Yeah, we make about $600 a month above the mortgage while we live in it.
That is really incredible. I mean, when you think about that you're making $600 to live in the property. I mean, that is like mind blowing like that. So you've gotten rid of your mortgage payment and you're making money every month. I love that. All right. So let's talk about your next deal. So once you were living in this property for a while, you decided to do this again. How long did you wait to buy your second property?
So we closed almost exactly 12 months after we closed on the first one.
Okay.
So we closed on the second one. We spent our year that the bank required, and then we wanted to make sure we closed day 366.
Which is exactly what we did. We started looking probably like 7 months after we moved in here.
Yeah, 7 or 8 months.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, with the next property, were you able to get into it with a small down payment again?
We were, and it was extremely painful. So we tried the FHA. They said that we lived too close, that they weren't going to fund it. And then they talked about how it would look bad to have another government-backed loan for an investment property, even though we were going to live in there. So we actually went door to door to banks in my Polo, and I printed out some market research, and eventually we found a portfolio loan for 5% down, as long as we lived in it.
Okay, perfect. And how did you find this next fourplex?
It was the same person. We texted him and said, "Hey, do you want to sell again?" And he's building a lake house. So he said, "Yeah, that sounds good."
Awesome. So this is the third property that you bought from the seller.
Yes.
Yes, sir.
That is great. Okay. So what kind of condition was the property in?
So originally he showed us one that was in absolutely terrible condition.
Oh, it's probably the worst one in his portfolio.
It was something you'd see on TV.
Yeah.
And eventually we said, like, we politely said that we were unable to close on that one. And then he said, well, I have some other ones in my portfolio. And he said that it was in his retirement portfolio, but he'd be willing to sell one.
He was really, I think it wasn't that he was desperate for the cash, but he really wanted the cash in order to build his new house.
Okay.
So that was kind of our black swan.
That's the
okay.
That was the black swan in there. So we knew that he wanted to sell. We knew why he wanted to sell. And then he drove us over to this one. And this one is in, so far, much nicer condition.
Yes.
Okay.
So we're taking some walls out.
And did you have to kick somebody out to move in, or did you have a vacant?
So everyone in that building was on a month-to-month, but we did have to move somebody out. But he moved across the street.
Okay. And did that property need any work?
So it doesn't need anything huge. It has like some minor stuff that we have to do here and there, but we are flipping our unit just because we like having a little bit finer finishes.
Okay. All right. So now this is where house hacking gets exciting, when you have a building that's profitable and you move out of it, because it just gets even more profitable, because now you're making money on the unit that you were initially living in. So this property was making $600 a month with you living in it. Now that you're not living in the building anymore, how much are you making off of it?
So we still have probably one more month of living here while we're flipping the other unit.
Okay.
But we're putting it out there for about $1,200 more. So we'll make about $1,800 above the mortgage.
Incredible. Okay. So you're going to make $1,800 on that building, plus like a little bit over $200 on your first house. So now you're at around $2,000 a month. And then when you guys move into the new fourplex, how much will you make every month?
So right now it makes $300 above the mortgage, but it's probably going to make $600 again because some of the rents are below market again.
Okay. All right. So you've got $2,600 a month in cash flow when you move in there, and you're living for free.
Yep.
That's awesome. Good. Well done, guys. I'm really happy for you. $2,600 a month, and they're living for free. And the great thing with rental income is you really don't pay tax on it. With the new tax law, you've got that 20% deduction of all your profit right off the top. And then with depreciation, it usually cancels out on paper any kind of gains. So that they really are doing great. During the interview, Grayson mentioned he's in the military, and his bosses asked me to say that everything Grayson talked about is his opinion and not the opinion of the Air Force or the Department of Defense. I'd also like to thank today's sponsor. It's Chaley Ridge from Ridge Lending Group. If you want to buy a rental property or maybe even do a house hack, definitely reach out to Chaley. She is a nationwide lender, and she specializes in helping investors buy rental properties. She's got a ton of different loan programs, and if you want to buy a rental property, she can make it happen. If you want to find out more, go to ridgelendinggroup.com. That's RIDGE, lendinggroup.com. If you mention Rental Income Podcast, she will waive all of the pre-qualification fees. NMLS 42056. Thank you so much for listening. We'll be back with a new episode next Tuesday. My name is Dan Lane, and this has been the Rental Income Podcast.